And CEO of Mahouts Elephant Foundation. We're a UK registered charity. We're dedicated to improving welfare for captive working Asian elephants across Asia, with a particular focus on Thailand, and we have 2 projects based in Thailand, which I'll talk more about. This beautiful lady is Tongkam. She's an individual with a unique personality, and she has a life story. She has self-determination, social bonds with direct relatives, space, and the opportunity to naturally forage. She's incredible, and she lives at our first project. So you all know this. I know you know this, but it doesn't hurt to go over it. So what do we know about Asian elephants? Very basic stuff. That we know they're endangered. We know they're intelligent. We know they're highly social. They live in multi-generational family groups. And all elephants are captive held, having never been through a domestication process. Just briefly, we know that elephants are still being taken from the big forests in Myanmar and smuggled across the border into Thailand purely for the tourist industry. So what does elephant tourism look like? We still see this today, startlingly, because of all the campaigning that's been going on. And we still see lots of Western tourists enjoying all of these things. So you see painting. And the tourists actually believe that the elephant is showing intelligence because they're painting an image of themselves. That's really what people believe. You know, when you watch it, you know that there's a nail in the ear, and it's through a training process, and a nail up is a stroke up, a nail down is a stroke down, and that's how it's done, or a finger up inside the tusk cavity. But we see people cheering and clapping and applauding this all the time. This is a bull that we've seen quite a few times at one of the big camps in Thailand. You can see how the short chaining he's on. He's standing in his own dung and urine. He's on a very unsuitable substrate. He's covered in wounds and scars. He's had his tusks cut, which is very, very common. They do it if the bull becomes aggressive, which you would in that situation, and also they then get ivory as well. Circus performing tricks are still done, very common and very accepted, and the classic chair riding scenario. I spent a lot of time, a lot of years in these places watching and learning, and because one of the biggest things for me is there's a lot of campaigns about banning this, banning that, but nobody, we talk about removing elephants from this obvious pain and suffering, but there's not a lot of talk about what can we really do for them, where should they be? I think we settle often for quite poor solutions for them, and I just felt we could take this a step further, and I've become quite obsessed with space. To me, when I watched the elephants in the camps, it was actually a relief when they went to work because it meant they got off those short chains and they could walk. I always imagined how painful that was to just be stood in one place for so many hours on a tiny little chain like this, an animal that size not being able to even move. The Mahouts suffer as well. So nearly 5,000 elephants live in the elephant camps in Thailand. They suffer alongside their Mahouts. They're forced to work in the elephant tourism industry. Most of these elephants, as I said, they live tethered on short chains, unable to forage for food, socialize or express any of their natural behaviors. This is a Mahout home in an elephant camp, and people never get to see this. It's a shack. You'll have 3 generations living in here. These people cannot feed their children. So, you know, we march in as Westerners and we demand them to look after their elephant. That's a huge ask when you can't look after your family. People leave their beautiful homes, their beautiful forests. They come to the cities because they think they can make money from their elephants. The dream doesn't pan out. It's a miserable existence. There's drugs in the camps, there's alcohol, huge, huge problems. They have no electricity. They have often no running water. The Mahouts in this camp, they have to bathe in public in a concrete bin that the elephants drink from. The ladies have to do that. They wrap a sarong around themselves, and there's rides going past them while they're trying to bathe. It's awful. So I researched for many years in the camps, and I wanted to see where these elephants were actually coming from before they entered the tourist industry. I went to traditional elephant keeping Karen communities to try to learn about the history of the elephants. When I met with community leaders whose communities have coexisted with elephants for hundreds of years, I found that their voices were not being heard within the international community. This is Manit. He's in his 60s. He has over 50 years' experience of working with elephants. He's the most incredible man I've ever met. He's a healer, a shaman healer. And his love for elephants is just profound. He's just completely at one with them. He knows every herb, every plant in the forest. He knows exactly what these elephants should be eating. If an elephant moves towards a tiny herb, he'll say, she's got a bad tummy today. She knows she needs to eat that herb. His knowledge is just incredible. He's never worked in tourism. He's worked in logging many, many, many years ago. And his dream was to have these elephants in his community back in the forest that he loves dearly. And we're working together to make that happen. So I walked through the vast forests where the elephants live, and I witnessed the highest welfare standards I'd ever seen for captive elephants. And I realized how much we had to learn as an international community. So together in equal collaboration, we've developed a new model for elephant tourism and conservation that benefits the entire community, protects elephants and the forest. Critically, this model provides a path home for elephants working in captivity, and it prevents elephants from having to leave their vast forest homes in the first place. So these are our elephants living deeply in the forest. They have access to rivers, to streams, to endless amounts of mud. This forest is over 8,000 acres. You can see this is how our guests get out to the forest. We take tourists to visit the elephants. It's a hands-off model. They just observe and watch. And we walk with the Mahouts. We track the elephants. We go and find them in the forest. They're captive elephants, so, you know, they all have Mahouts. They're very used to people coming and watching them. And it should be hard work. This is how we believe that it should be. You know, it's not everybody's right to see an Asian elephant because you're a tourist. So guests have to walk. It can be 2 hours climbing. We have mountains like this, and people never believe the hills that the elephants go up, and the people struggle to get up there. So this is kind of the lives that our elephants are leading. Community engagement, we immerse completely within our communities. As I discussed earlier on, we have a model of community-based tourism that everybody benefits from. People stay in a homestay. We have now a guest house that everybody shares that's of benefit to the community, but it gives a higher level of nicer accommodation. The ladies do weavings, they demonstrate the weaving. The elder men in the village do basket making, and guests love to have a go at trying that. We go out foraging with the ladies, we collect vegetables, and then the guests will cook and learn about Karen cooking. We have camping in the forest, so we take our guests out and they camp overnight in the forest. We wake up to the sound of the wild gibbons, and that really helps the community to understand the importance of wildlife. You know, they hunt sometimes, that's their culture. And we say, no, just preserve, listen, look at people's faces when they hear those gibbons when they wake up in the morning, and everybody gets it, everybody sees it. What we like to create is these little campsites in the depths of the forest, and we put little fences around them. It's to keep the buffalo out, not the elephants. And the people are out in the forest. The elephants are out in the forest. The people are in the little campsites, and the elephants come and have a nosy at us in our campsite. And if the elephants knock the campsite down, it's fine. It's built of bamboo. They often do. We just rebuild it. It's not a problem. So what does community engagement look like? This sums it up, I think. This is our new community who we've just recently started working with. We've been in talks with them for the past year. And this is it. We sit around on the floor, we sit in the forest sometimes with the elephants. That's how we have our meetings. We thrash out ideas. We talk about our hopes, our dreams. We all have the same end goal, we've discovered. We want the elephants to have the best welfare and to be living in the forests that is their birthright. And these communities desperately need our support. This village is poverty-stricken. They have nothing. They're very remote. I was the first foreigner to go there. And they're just incredible people. They want the best, you know. The elephants have been leaving this forest at an alarming rate. The older gentleman is the elder of the village. The one next to him is a Mahout, and the other two are his sons, and the one next to me on the end is the new village chief, and he's a remarkable man with incredible ideas. They're grasping it very, very quickly. They want help with all kinds of things. There's a history of opium growing in the region. There's child mortality still because they can't get access to health care. They're Karen people, they struggle. So, you know, with our support, with taking guests there, this community is going to thrive. So we're asked for our advice from within the tour industry. I've been working within the tour industry for a long time, and that prompted me to start these projects because I was told long ago there were no alternatives, so we were determined to go and create them. We work with other NGOs and foreign governments. We realise that the best way to inform accurate discussions about welfare is with properly conducted research published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. We passionately believe that this research must be done on elephants living in their natural habitat, unimpaired by human-designed schedules and free to express all natural behaviours. Through our research, we're learning all the time incredible things. Our elephants find caves deep in the forest, and they're accessing salts and minerals for their diet down there. So this summer, in partnership with the Institute for Compassionate Conservation and the Centre for Compassionate Conservation, we had a team of research fellows visited our project and conducted field research. 2 ethologists collected focal behaviour observations on the elephants. They recorded their communications, including infrasonic vocalizations, using specially designed low-frequency microphones, and we catalogued their foraging ecology. The current body of research on Asian elephants is lacking due to the logistical difficulties of studying elephants in their natural habitat. Assumptions about Asian elephants based on their African counterparts are often made, but these are very dangerous as Asian and African elephants are different species, evolved to live in vastly different environments. Asian elephants deserve their own body of knowledge, and we intend to contribute as much as we can to it, while using what we find to advocate for what these beautiful beings really need. The work is still underway, it's very early days, but we have some preliminary findings which are very exciting, which were recently presented at a conference in Paris by one of our researchers. Okay, so what are ethograms? So our team is creating individualized ethograms, behavioral catalogues, for each of our elephants, highlighting importance that rehabilitation must meet the individual needs of every elephant. Ethograms are usually created for an entire species, painting all elephants with a broad brush. We are choosing instead to create individual ethograms based on aspects of personality and to demonstrate how elephants are unique individuals. Our researchers analyse their observations of the elephants' day-to-day lives, and they map out how elephants choose to spend their time in various activity budgets. The preliminary data shows that the elephants in our care, which have been returned to the forest after living in intensively managed captive environments, appear to express an activity budget similar to lifelong wild Asian elephants. This illustrates the hope that we should all have for captive elephants, that they have the capabilities to thrive in their natural environment with the right model of rehabilitation. Based on the elephants' activity budgets, or how they spend their time and energy, we're also able to comment on the importance of the way elephants spend their time foraging. We talk a lot about foraging now because we're discovering just the intensity of that behaviour. So why is foraging so important? Elephants spend over 50% of their day foraging. Without access to their natural diet and the space and freedom to forage, Asian elephants are losing the majority of what they evolved to use their brain and body to do. Foraging is complex, intellectually enriching aspect to elephants' lives, and what should be seen as a birthright for all elephants. Foraging is not just about getting the nutrients the elephant needs. The feeding process utilizes their problem-solving, planning, and other high-level cognitive functions. It uses all their different muscle groups, from knocking down trees to digging up roots. Foraging requires thinking socially. Tongkam must determine if the area she is leading her herd to will have enough food for her calves, who cannot access all of the foods which require more strength and develop muscle mass, as she's clearly demonstrating her wonderful muscles here. If elephants are given the choice, they would choose to spend their days foraging. If we accept that that is a right of all elephants, there is no world in which an elephant could possibly work. There just simply is not the time. Elodie summed this up beautifully, I think. The ability to forage for native vegetation allows Asian elephants to express complex feeding behaviours. In captive environments, this behavioural repertoire is largely suppressed due to the provision of a limited prepared diet, largely grass and corn, and to their physical constraints. So as discussed, we use individualised ethograms for each elephant. With the young elephants in our care, a high proportion of each day is spent in play activity. As with any developing brain, learning through play is a vital part of growing up. Our youngest elephant here, Sunti, is just over 2 years old, and he's with Mario and Bifan, who are 6 and 8. And Mario and Sunti play all the time together. So Sunti engages in play for around a quarter of his day, half by himself, half with other young individuals in the herd. He also plays with the Mahouts, and this is vital behaviour. Every day they're touching him, they feel him all over, because he's a captive elephant. He's going to grow up as a captive bull despite this huge forest he lives in. He has to get used to being touched, being managed by the Mahouts. But those positive early bonds are really, really, really important. He gets very frustrated he can't climb trees, and the Mahouts always run up the trees away from him. Sadly, in tourist environment, working life leads to social isolation and a complete lack of natural play activity. So our achievements to date, our first project is set in over 8,000 acres of forested land. We have 4 elephants and we serve a community of 400 residents. Our new project, which is just launching right now, is in over 90,000 acres of forest. It's incredible. It connects to several national parks, and 4 elephants will be protected from leaving, and many more can join us with adequate funding in place, and that's always our biggest obstacle. We're saving hundreds of other wild species by protecting the forest. This is our new project. We had a drone out there a couple of weeks ago, and this picture is just remarkable to me. These are captive elephants. They're really captive elephants. I think this just shows the life they have. It's just phenomenal. These 4 elephants the week before this had a wild bull with them. They interact freely. The bull comes in. There's 3 bulls that visit. And we're going to learn so much here because there's a calf here who her father is one of the wild bulls. He's not mating. He didn't come back recently to mate with any of the females. And the villagers tell us they have profound knowledge, but they say, yeah, they come back all the time. They come to visit their babies. Of course they do. Well, you know, that stuff needs documenting. Why are we so obsessed with forest? We have a real issue in Thailand with corn farming. It's devastating. What we find is once the captive elephants leave these communities, the young people start leaving, and the village have to turn to something. Corn is a cash crop. It's terrible. It uses huge amounts of pesticide and it just destroys the forest. We see it happening all over when these elephants leave. It's as simple as that. If we let these elephants leave this beautiful forest, it will become this corn farming area is 12 kilometers down the mountain. We're lucky we're at the top of the mountain, so it hasn't reached us yet, but it's that close. This situation is dire for this forest and the elephants. So sorry, I've lost my thread. Okay. So we're already hearing from other communities and villages in the area, village elders who are hearing about our work, and we were actually invited to start our new project, which is a huge honour. Through the trust we've built up over the years of working very gently alongside communities, sharing ideas and experiences rather than directing the path that we assume to be correct, word is spreading of new possibilities for mahouts and elephants in Asia. We are realising as we progress, this model is scalable beyond any of our imagination. Just back to Tongkam, this is her. I took this photo before we did our mammoth walk home with these elephants. This was her working. So she was in a neck riding facility. Baifern is just here, her daughter, and Baifern was a complete delinquent. She was on her last warning in the camp. She'd grown up in the camp, and because Tongkam was always in work mode, it doesn't matter if there's a seat on the back really or not. I know there's issues with the seat, but she's in work mode. She had to ignore her daughter. Her daughter was going around kicking tourists and being really terrible. So it was time to leave and come back to the forest. But I just wanted you to see this picture before the next picture. This is just my favorite image that we have over the years we've been doing this. It means everything to me. So the story of this picture is that we'd just returned back from walking the elephants back from the trekking camp. We had 2 days in the forest while they were getting used to the forest again. We were all near this big river. The elephants were playing and rolling around, splashing around. We had photographers there and a film crew. And suddenly Tongkam just got up and thought, that's enough. So she walked across to the other side of the river. We were this side and we were camping down here. She walked off and it was getting dark, and she led the little herd away into that forest. And she'd been in a trekking camp before this. And I looked around as we were all heading back to camp, and the Mahouts were all behind me. And I said to my husband, there's nobody with those elephants. It just struck me for the first time what we'd done, what we'd achieved, that she was leading her babies out into the forest for a night under the stars, alone, with no humans around, and the Mahouts went out and they found them the next morning. It was the most incredible experience, and that's what keeps us going. One other thing is I hear a lot from tour companies that, and I found this out very recently, there's a real view coming in that these elephants that are captive are almost becoming talked about like a different species. It's very strange, but people talk about them like pets, like they're domesticated. It was startling to me. I was at a big tourism conference and I could hear these conversations going on. What we've learned is the drive for elephant tourism is never going to go away. We can't pretend it will. But let us not demote captive elephants from membership to their species, Elephas maximus. A week before this photo was taken, as I said, Tongkam was in a camp with a tourist riding on her neck. We believe that every individual elephant possesses the drive for self-determination and dignity. In other words, what we define as wildness. I believe we have a duty to show better and to do better for captive elephants and the communities that coexist with them. Thank you very much.